Hello and welcome to another interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching well over 1,000 comedians for nearly 50 years. My guest today is the wonderful comedian. It's Mr. James Dowdeswell. Yeah! Hello!
Good afternoon, Richard. How are you?
I'm all right, my friend. How are you?
Very well indeed. Very well.
It's great to see you. We are recording this in January 2023. So happy New Year, my friend.
A happy New Year to you as well.
How are you? You all right?
I'm very good. I'm very good. When you did that hurrah, I remembered the moment I first encountered you. It was in Always Be Comedy in Kennington. Walking on the stage to see you in the front row with that huge laugh and raw. And I have to say, it was a lovely gig.
Quite legendary.
Yeah.
But
yes, you create a wave of laughter, and the other audience members tend to follow. So as a comedian, you're basically surfing on your laugh.
That's so kind of you to say. Thank you so much.
No, it's a pleasure. You're well known for
it. We're going to talk about your career for the next 45 minutes or hour or so. And I'd like to go right back to the start and ask you, how did you become a comedian in the first place, please?
Well, I was at Swansea University back in 1993. And I was queued up Freshers Week to join the football team. And the queue was really long and I was getting distracted. And there was no queue on the desk next to it. And there was a guy blowing smoke rings over the top of a newspaper. And I thought, what's he up to? And it said Comedy Society. So I said to the guy in front, can you hold my place, please? And I went and spoke to them and they did stand-up comedy. They said, I thought it was like a comedy group, like people who like Python or whatever. And they said, no, we do stand-up. And I said, what's stand-up? They go, oh, like Ben Elton. Oh, right, okay. And they said, would you like to have a go? And I said, well, I don't really know what it is. So, because back then stand-up wasn't that well known. Anyway, I went to see their first comedy show and there were some brilliant acts and there were also some rubbish ones. And I thought, well, I would never be as good as that, but I could do better than that. So I had a go, and at the end of term, I did my very first gig. And I had no idea what I was doing. I did sort of loads of character pieces and impressions. And I got through it by sheer enthusiasm.
Yeah. This was 1993, was it?
Yes, 1993. Yes, 1993. Yeah.
So you're at Swansea University and you brave the storm to stand up in front of a crowd of how many?
Well, this is the weird thing. It was a packed student union bar. So I'd say there was about sort of 500 people packed into this bar. Wow. So my first gig wasn't in front of 10 people. It was in front of about 500.
That must have been terrifying.
It was terrifying, but I didn't really know what I was doing. So I kind of got away with it. And then I did another one the next term. And I came onto some music and they played the wrong music and it threw me. And the third gig I did, they had a surf band on. And so there were loads of surfers in the audience. And I did 7 minutes just taking the mickey out of surfers and Point Break. And that went really well. So that was enough for me to continue.
What inspired you to have a go? Did you just want to stand up in front of an audience and be confident, or what was it that inspired you to get up and have a go?
Well, age 7, apparently this on the fridge door at my parents' house, there was a little piece of paper of a drawing and it said, when I grew up, I want to take over the Kenny Everett show.
Oh, fantastic.
I loved Kenny Everett. I loved impressions. I didn't know what stand-up was, but I knew I wanted to do something around that. I thought it would be a radio DJ or something along those lines. And I've always liked that sort of thing. My dad encouraged it because his granddad. So my great granddad was on the stage. He was a character comic. He was like a clown, and he was on the West End stage for years. And so it sort of runs in the blood. And he looks exactly like me. He's got a slight wonky eye. He's got the same nose, same hair. He looks identical.
That's brilliant, though. If he already had a career on stage, it would give you the momentum to think, I wouldn't mind having a go at that myself.
Exactly. And my aunt was also an actress. She was on the buses. She was in the first series of Dad's Army.
Wow.
So she was in loads of sitcoms in the 70s. So it was kind of in the blood. And my aunt told me all about things. And so I kind of, even when you're just starting and you doubt yourself, which we all do, I kind of felt it was in my blood. So I kind of felt that gave me an inner confidence that maybe other people didn't have, you know.
It's brilliant that you had an aunt who was on the television with all these stand-up, with all these situation comedy series, because that's how I got into it. I can remember sitting aged about 5 years old and everybody in the family laughing at Dad's Army, Fawlty Towers, on the buses, Bless This House, etc. And I thought, this is amazing.
So get this, she was in the first series of Dad's Army. She played Janet King, the receptionist in the bank. So she was Mannering's receptionist. She only did the first series because she wanted to get out of it because she didn't think it was a good hit. It would be a hit. No one thought it'd be a hit, and she wanted to go and do a play in Great Yarmouth.
Wow.
So,
based on watching these sitcoms, my first ever gig was on holiday in Scarborough, because my home city is Carlisle, and we went to Scarborough on holiday. And my first ever gig was Les Dawson at the in a theatre in Scarborough, and he was incredible. He was so funny. And a year later, we saw Tommy Cooper, and I got the bug. I just thought, this is amazing.
Yeah.
The ones that I never saw,
because you always sit. Yeah, you always sit in the front row, don't you? When I used to watch comedy myself, I used to love sitting near the front, in the eye of the storm, I used to call it. I used to like being in the second row or the third row, not the front row, but just off. And as I've got older, you know, as a comic, I now stand at the back, you know, but I used to like being right in it.
I was never very confident for a while, so I would sit like halfway back or even towards the back. It was only in the last 4 or 5 years that I've got to the front row.
Wow.
Yeah, but I always had this laugh, and the reason why I thought I'd got the laugh was we went on another holiday to Torquay when I was 10. And I always had this strange diet, and my mum and dad said, eat everything that the waiter or the waitress puts down in front of you. And I did, and I discovered roast dinners and it's all the rest of it. And they said to me, they said, as a treat, we're going to see a show. And it was Tom O'Connor at Paynton.
Oh, wow.
I mean, here we go. Right. So
he's class.
He walked on and he's doing his patter, and I'm sitting there. And suddenly I'm really loud laugh, and it floored him. He left the stage, double backed, walked back on again, and went, "You're really getting this, aren't you, sir?" To me, I'm like, there must be a laugh, you know. There must be something, and I knew I had this ammunition, if you like, this wonderful ammunition, which supports all the comedians I go and see. You know, it's. I should get it insured.
Yeah. Has anybody ever asked you to come along to a DVD recording?
No, I've been along to a lot of new comedians starting out as their friend.
Right.
Right. Because I'll either sit there in silence and not say anything if they're not funny, or I'll bellow at them, you know, if they're hilarious.
Wonderful.
Never heckle. It's not it's not the right thing to do.
Well, if I ever do a DVD recording, I'll A, invite you along, and B, put you in the credits.
Please do. That would just be
Gill.
The best. That would be so kind of you. Thank you so much. So did you then, from university, doing your 2 or 3 stand-up gigs, did you then progress to the pubs to do 5-minute routines?
Yeah, so
Is that how you
I
got
was
in?
very lucky. I was very lucky, in fact, because the guys who were running the comedy group set up their own comedy club in Swansea. When they graduated, they stayed on a year because I was the youngest in the year, the youngest doing it. And so I went and did a professional club, and that was really good because I was very lucky because I got to see at an early age good comedians. So I remember coming down to that club, and I did a gig where Paul Tonkinson was the headline act.
That was brilliant.
Another one where Mark Hurst was on. So even though I was sort of starting out, I kind of knew what I was aiming towards. The other thing I did was I clearly knew I was a way off the pace. So, I mean, when I gigged, I literally did about 4 a year over university. So by the end of university, I'd done maybe 11, 12 gigs, I hadn't hardly done anything. But what I did do was I wrote for the student newspaper, and I reviewed the comedy thing, which meant I could get in for free. And so I got to see some great people. The best one I saw was I think it was called the Carlsberg Comedy Network, Avalon. And Al Murray came down, and it was in what was called the Student Village. So it was quite a small student union, that one. And he was the compere, and he had 2 acts on, but he was also the headline act, and he was incredible. Yeah. I've never seen anything like it. He improvised off everybody. He was absolutely brilliant. And I went up to him after and said, "Oh, hello, I'm work for the student newspaper. Could I possibly ask you a couple of questions? Here's 2 pints. Can I ask you a couple of questions while you down these?" And he went, "That's the kind of interview style I like, my friend." So he said, "Sit down." So,
he is.
I saw some great.
He is so good.
And I bought actually. He's amazing. My dad's mum, they celebrated 40 years in charge of their pub, so I bought them 2 tickets to see Al Murray, the pub landlord in Bristol. And I said to him next day, "What do you think of Al Murray, Dad?" My dad said, "Well, I agreed with them on some issues, but not all." I said, "What did you agree with?" He goes, "White wine for the lady." Quite correct. But he loved it.
I've seen him many, many, many times right throughout his career, because he used to start off, Al Murray, impersonating machine gun.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. I never saw it.
And I saw that, and then he was amazing doing that, and then he progressed to working with Harry Hill and joining Avalon, and
yeah.
We see him like once every 3 months or so. He's so good.
He's amazing.
I think, other than Alan Partridge, I think he is the greatest character comic in Britain, because he's so good with an audience. And
I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Oh, he's just incredible. So there you are on stage, doing your comedy act. What do you like to
By the way, can I interrupt? It's quite a jump. I was just thinking about Al Murray and how wonderful he was. And now I've got to go back to my little thing.
Well, no, because it's all about experience. I tell this to other comedians. It's all experience, and the more experience you get. So there you are. What do you like to talk about on stage when you do your stand-up? Are there any particular themes? Are there any areas that you want to try and talk about to an audience, or is it just spontaneity?
Well, this is interesting, actually. I think this is quite a fascinating topic, in that when I first started, I talked about my granddad. I did my dog. I didn't have a dog at the time. I had no life experience, and it's only recently I've had more life experience. I'm able to talk a bit more about in-depth issue. I've got more to talk about. In fact, it's quite frustrating, because when I had years ago, I had as much stage time as you could throw at me, but I didn't have enough to talk about. Now I've got less stage time, more to say. So it's interesting. As you get older, you've got more of a perspective on things, and you feel more comfortable to say things. So I have kind of two styles of comedy at the minute. I've got my the stand-up I do, the straight stand-up, which is slightly sort of a kind of a geeky physics teacher, computer nerd kind of persona, which I didn't invent. The audience kind of invent for me.
Then I've also got my
other side, which is the comparing. I love comparing. When I first started, I was terrified of comparing. In fact, Hannah Chambers, who's Jimmy Carr's agent, said, "I see you as a compare," and she got me comparing. But I hated it, and I clung to material. But now I love comparing, and I love that feeling of going up on stage at the start, not knowing what's going to happen. But of course, something happens in the room, and the trick is not to panic. You know, and there's some wonderful compares out there, and I've only been comparing since 2015. I did a show up in Edinburgh about the perfect pub, and I asked the audience what they liked in their perfect pub, and then riffed on it. But it was basically a month when I learned to compare. And there's some incredible compares out there. I mean, some of my favourites are Roger Monkhouse is just, I mean, it's just so smooth and silky. The way he just weaves between talking to the audience and into material, you wouldn't notice he's gone into material. Stephen K. Amos is an inspiration with comparing, that he would never bring an act on until the audience was ready. It's very, very unselfish. He's an incredible compare. Also, another person I learned from, in hindsight, because I didn't realise it at the time, was John Richardson, because what John would do was he'd ask a question, then he'd ask maybe another question. He wouldn't rush in trying to be funny. He'd gauge the situation and then take it in the direction he wanted to take it. And that was something really interesting. A lot of compares will ask, "What's your name? What do you do?" And then try and riff on that quite quickly. I don't tend to ask people what they do as a compare. It tends to be my last resort, only because I think that when you're an audience member going to comedy, you're usually trying to escape your job. You don't really want to be. And I don't think it's fair to define people by their job. So I don't tend to ask them what they do for a living.
Do you prefer comparing to performing a stand-up routine?
Interesting. I suppose it depends on the club, really. I'm comparing Covent Garden next weekend, and that's just such a wonderful place to compare, because you're right in the eye of the storm, and you can speak to anybody in the room. It's very intimate. And I like to create an atmosphere where they feel like they can talk to me, and I'm not going to belittle anybody. So we create something together. So that's really good fun. And then maybe you're comparing, I don't know, a sports club. Then it's a bit harder because you have to work harder. And I tend to find that they get me through the evening. So it depends on the venue, really.
Depends on the room. Yes.
I also do quite a bit of corporate warm-up, which I really enjoy. So I'll do 10 minutes before a more famous comedian, and I really like that because I take the room from nothing to something. But because I'm handing over to somebody else, I'm never nervous, because it's the buck doesn't stop with me. With the corporate gig, you tend to feel like you've got to end on such a high, but I'm passing it on to somebody else. So as long as they're laughing and engaged, I'm happy.
It's very interesting what you're saying about all the different sorts of gigs that you do, because and also as well about the reviewing, because I believe my blog, the whole idea for this blog and podcast, I think it's unique because nobody's ever gone at it from an audience point of view. So it's all about what happens when I'm there, and as you say, of the moment. And I think that's the wonderful thing about live performance. You never know what you're going to get, and that's the magic of it. And so to not only support the big famous comedians, but also the up and coming ones. It's just took off. It's a wonderful thing, and to have the reviewing experience of it as well obviously helps, I think, create your persona on stage as well. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I do agree with that, and I do think also comparing. What's interesting is I get to see more acts. If I'm doing a set, I might be on first, and I might go home or go on to another gig. Or if you're closing, you might get there, you might miss the half the first act. Whereas comparing, you see everybody. And when I started out, I used to learn from the older comedians. What's interesting now, I tend to find I'm learning more from the younger ones. For example, I'm comparing Covent Garden this Friday, Saturday. I'm more excited about seeing the 10-minute middle acts than I am the more established ones, because I know what they do. And also I'm quite fascinated by the younger generation. I must be sound old, but there's a different style of comedy evolving, and you know, the way they present themselves, the way, the attitude, the fact they're all over social media. It's just, I just find it quite fascinating. And when lockdown hit, I thought, right, there were loads of people moaning and complaining, older comics, we're losing our work. And I thought, right, what would I do 20 years ago? What are the younger kids doing? And I started following the younger ones on Instagram, and I was really inspired by what they were doing. And it's fantastic, you know. And
I love the originality.
You know, so for example, you could do a gig. So for example, the big game changer for me, I was comparing down at New Cross, and there were 50 people in between lockdown 1 and 2, and I videoed a tiny bit in front of 50 people. Then I put it out on Instagram, and it gets seen by thousands of people. And so you realize there's a bigger audience out there, and you know, you can play with these things, and it's brilliant. We're in a better place than we've ever been before.
Very, very.
I know the live circuit is struggling a little bit, but it's the two go hand in hand, I think. And if we can get some of those people that watch online to come to comedy clubs, it's really going to be rich.
I think the fact that online happened and the comedians could time the jokes, and once it was all up and working, the numbers that they got for the gigs were extraordinary. I used to go to Happy Mondays with Sean James. I used to go to Always Be Comedy. I used to go to Boothby Graffoe, did a musical one on a Thursday night, which was brilliant.
Oh yeah.
And I used to go to Jarlath Regan's Irishman Abroad one, and the numbers were phenomenal. And I think that it wouldn't surprise me if there were comedy gigs or tours where you would go for the live experience, but it could also either be streamed or it would be a separate streaming thing, so more people could get at it. Because once,
I think that's a brilliant thing. We went to go and see. We were going to go and see Richard E. Grant. Me and my partner were going to go and see Richard E. Grant show in the West End, and it turned out, for some reason or other, we weren't able to go. But then my partner found it was live streamed. So because we were well enough to go, COVID, we were able to watch it at home. And it was incredible. So that was, I really enjoyed that. It wasn't the same, but it was incredible.
It's not the same, but it's great that that it's available if you want to do that.
But I got on those during lockdown. I was very lucky. A friend of mine had a sort of studio, and I got on pretty early with the corporates, and it was great for them doing those. But what I said earlier about filming and gigs online, I didn't actually mean the Zoom gigs. What I meant was just taking 30 seconds of your act and putting it on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, and suddenly, you know, like the younger ones do, and your audience is so much bigger. But it's the trick is, if we can convert people who are on Instagram or YouTube to going to see a live gig, you know, there's certain people like what's his name? I'm going to think of his surname, Alistair. He's doing
Alistair Barry.
No, I think of it as Al. It used to go by the name of Al Stick. He used to run Happy Mondays. That's embarrassing. Alistair.
I can't remember his name, but I know who you mean.
Yeah, he's doing character stuff online.
Yeah,
he's got thousands of 45,000 followers, and now he's doing live gigs, and those people are coming to see him, which is amazing.
It's obviously a way of increasing an audience, as you say. So we'll wait and see what happens with it. But it is obviously, I think, the one of the future of comedy. When you're on stage, tell me about your writing process for a routine or a show. Do you have a specific writing process?
I used to, when I first started, I would sit down with a blank piece of paper and try and write some funny jokes. And I'd scribble them all over the piece of paper. Then I'd write them up in neat, put them in a folder. like I was submitting some homework. I'd still got that folder of my first 10-minute set. But now it tends to be, like most people, probably an idea that's a note on my phone. And then when I'm at Happy Mondays, I'll sort of, in the afternoon, I'll collate all the recent notes on the phone and then say them out loud and try and remember them. I also go to the Monday Club at the Museum of Comedy. That's brilliant for trying new material. So I tend to say it the first time out loud there. And I just have a set list. I have a small piece of paper which I just put in the palm of my hand so I can glance down. But people don't notice it that much, and I can just glance down. But you only have to remember 5 minutes, and I tend to try and do that.
That's brilliant.
Also, I tend to find it's a great way of doing material because you can throw something in. When you're doing a set and you deliver a new bit, you might be in a rhythm. And it's so jarring when you do a newer bit because you're not so confident in selling it. But comparing, it's such a great way of trialing material because you can just throw it in. And if nobody laughs, you just carry on talking as if you just made a point.
The reason why I asked the question was years and years ago, I had a go at stand-up comedy myself. And
really?
Yeah, I wanted to get it out of my system because I could remember all these jokes and everything. And I knew a promoter, and I've told this to many a comedian, and they said to me, "We've got a gong show for old people, and it's on a Monday afternoon. It couldn't be worse, It was a difficult audience. It was a bad timing." But I wrote this script when I was in Carlisle. I passed my driving test, but I was not a very good driver. So it was all about me crashing cars and everything. They loved it. And he said, right, he said, you've got 3 minutes, walk out. And if they gong you, it's goodbye. So I walked out. And the first thing I said was, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can't see the resemblance myself. And one old bloke, there's only 3 people in the crowd, one old bloke at the back just went, fuck off. And the promoter went, I'm another go. I said, well, a similar thing happened. And I said to him, look, I think my fate is sitting in the audience supporting you all doing it. Never say never again. But it was extraordinary, and I had it all planned out, but it was so unexpected. And I think
you were unlucky. You were unlucky there.
Yeah. I mean,
you were lucky, and there's so much. You've got to try things a few times because you don't know especially when you start out. I came to London, and you think, oh right, there's a packed room, and then gradually, one by one, the audience gets up and does a set, and you realise, hang on. There's really only one genuine audience member in the room, and they're not enjoying it.
Well,
those early years were difficult, and you sometimes find with those kind of gigs, there's a whole bunch of people who got very good at making other comedians laugh, but that didn't translate into the professional club, so it was a waste of time. I won't say the names, you know they are.
Yes, well. What do you think makes a good comedian? You think that's a good question to ask?
Yeah, a good comedian. Do you know what? For me, a good comedian is someone who makes me laugh.
Simple as that.
I'm not snobbish. I don't mind. It can be daft. It's often daft with me. It could be anything. Anyone who makes me laugh. I think the most I've ever laughed is watching Harry Hill's Pub International tour.
Oh,
I mean, I gut laugh all the way through it. Absolutely hilarious.
he
But
is.
anyone who makes me laugh.
Yeah, he is phenomenal. He still holds the record for me for the greatest opening line I've ever heard from a set.
Oh yeah.
I saw him 30 odd years ago downstairs at the King's Head when I first came to London. And he was late. He brushed past me, jumped up onto the stage, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry. I had to have a testicle brought down. I'm really sorry I'm late. I had to have a testicle brought down." And paused, and everybody laughed. And then he said, "From Derby." It's amazing. And when I met him 30 odd years later, I told him this story. And he went, "Oh, I still keep telling that to this day, Rich."
Well, brilliant.
Just amazing.
It's amazing.
What a genius act he is. He really is. He's always innovative, always new. It's wonderful he's come back into the clubs after having the success in the TV and in the arena.
Yeah.
Just a wonderful, wonderful man. How do you cope with any nerves before you go on stage? Do you suffer from nerves at all?
Yeah, weirdly, when I'm doing a set, I tend to be more nervous than comparing.
Right.
It used to be the other way around. When I'm doing a set, maybe I'll be slightly nervous because you just want to get your opening line right or get something right. But when I'm comparing, I actually feel like I'm half an audience member, and I'll chat to people in the audience, and I don't feel as nervous. No.
Would you say
so
that?
I kind of feel at ease.
Would you say?
I went through.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. It's actually quite an interesting question because I realised I'm not getting nervous comparing. I'm so relaxed that actual fact I needed to get a bit more nervous to tighten the muscles. I was too relaxed.
Wow.
So I wasn't punchy enough. And I felt that when I did sets, sometimes I was sort of ambling, whereas I just need to sharpen up a little bit. So I'm trying to sort of embrace the nerves a bit more.
Would you say that?
So it's like they all say it's like an instrument.
Yeah. Would you say that as soon as you speak into the microphone, the nerves go?
I would say the nerves go as I'm walking up to the stage. I'm quite excited to get to the microphone, and I make eye contact with the audience, and the nerves go as I'm get to the mic, and then I tell a lie, half the nerves go, and the rest of them dissipate when you get your first laugh. And I think that's the same probably with most people.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you remember all your routines? And if you're delivering, say, a half-hour show, how do you process all your routines? How do you remember them all?
Yeah, good question. So you saw me do a newer stand-up show called Beers of a Clown, and I actually had to have a set list just on a table next to a pint. So if I grab a pint, I can look at it. To be honest, I don't really look at it, but the fact it's there means it's sort of a comfort. And I write that set list before the show, so it actually puts it in my head. It's only because it's an actual show that I come away and think, oh God, I've missed that bit out or missed this bit out. But when comparing, I don't have a plan. I just talk to somebody, and then that might spark something, and then I might remember an old bit of material that I'll crowbar in, or you know, it's kind of all in my head. It's all filed away.
Good man, good man.
It's kind of like Terminator, you know, when Terminator picks a weapon and he goes, choose, launch. That.
Well, there we are. That's a brilliant answer. Let's move on to Edinburgh. I am very lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year since 2005. It's my holiday.
Wow.
I go for a week and I see about 50 shows. I need a holiday by the end of it. I'm exhausted. Tell me about your first experience of Edinburgh, either as a punter or a performer, and when was your first actual proper gig there?
Okay, so I'll answer this question in two parts. So the first time as a brand new comedian, I went up, right, So You Think You're Funny.
Right.
I'm not sure what, I think it was like 97. I was fresh out of university. It
Yeah.
was only like my 15th gig. I went up to Edinburgh. I was far too new, you know. The winner of my heats was someone called Zeren Gibson, who did Valentine Fly Guy, a character. He was brilliant, far, you know, more experienced than me. But while I was up there, I saw three shows that I really remember. I saw Milton Jones do a show called The Head, which was absolutely hilarious. And I also took a gamble on someone called Sean Locke. And he was incredible. So wow. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And but I was brand new. I was only up there for a few days, didn't really know what I was doing. And then my first Edinburgh proper was, I was lucky enough to do the Scream Blue Murder show, the Cafe Royale, booked by Pete Harris. And the lineup was incredible. The early show was Alan Cochrane comparing Paul Sinnar, Marcus Birdman, and Mickey Flanagan. Wow. And then the late show, which I was on, was Alfie Joey comparing me, Natalie Haynes, and Howard Reed. And we all lived together. And it was, for me, it was the moment that I went from a sort of newer comedian in that I started the Edinburgh Festival with 15 minutes, and I could speak for 20, but to be honest, I had 15 minutes. And then by the end of the festival, I had 20 minutes, and it was amazing. And to watch Mickey Flanagan night after night, and back then, this was 2001, he was crafting a routine that he, halfway through the festival, called So was crafted back in 2001.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
And he was incredible. To watch him every night, just change a few lines here and there. It was excellent. It was really good. It was a privilege to watch. And then also I got to see the other thing that blew my mind was I went to see Leighton live, and the old Leighton live room, and I saw Tommy Tiernan do an extended set there. And what was incredible was the lights were taken right down, and he had a single spotlight, and nobody heckled him. And he did 45 minutes of storytelling, and it was mind-blowing, absolutely incredible. And the other thing I saw, I'm not sure if it was that year or a year after, was I saw Dom Herrera, the New York comic, and I saw him in the Gilded Balloon nightclub. Oh, so it must have been a couple of years later. And he did an hour show. He ended up doing an hour 15, and it was all very slow and laconic. And then later on, I went to Leighton Live, and he was on, and he did 15 minutes of exactly the same chunk, but he did it twice the speed.
Wow.
And so he did it rat-a-tat-tat in a different style, and it was equally funny for different reasons. It was really interesting. I've never seen that before. It's brilliant.
Yeah. That's brilliant. I've seen lots of popular comedians at Edinburgh start out. So I saw Michael McIntyre in a hut play about 40 people.
Yeah.
I saw Sarah Millican, I saw Alan Carr, I saw Alan Davis. Lots of them were just starting out. And it's wonderful. One of the nice things about the blog is that listing every act that they do, watching them develop is wonderful to see, you know. So long live the Edinburgh Fringe, because it is, or any festival, because it is an amazing experience, especially if you're into your comedy, to go and see a lot of different styles of performance. I'm one of these people who do one of these spreadsheets, and all my friends come up and go, and I have to perfectly time everything and sit in the center. But I love doing it. I absolutely love doing it.
It's incredible. I last did it in 2015 because my circumstances had changed. My partner's not very well, so I couldn't really justify sort of going up for a month anymore. But I kind of knew it was a kind of a semi-farewell in 2015, so that was fine. I do the Camden Fringe, Brighton Fringe, but I'd love to go up and do it again. But it's I think it's very different now to how it was. It's changed.
It's interesting because when of all the years that I've gone up, every year it seems to be more. I like the grunginess, the fringiness of it. So a classic example is somewhere like the Pleasance Courtyard, which is one of my favourite places in the world. I just like to have a pint of beer, watch the world go by, and then go and see my show. Every year it seems to be a bit more advertising, or a bit more there's promoters corporate and whatnot, and it's like, I don't want specialist food. I want I want beers and stuff, and that's just my personal point of view. But it still retains a very special atmosphere, and it's an incredible month for it. It really is. But also as well, you said I'm off to Brighton this year for the Fringe, and I'm going to the Leicester Comedy Festival. They're celebrating the 30th birthday.
Yeah, amazing.
I'm doing that in February. To date, my friend, what has been your comedy highlight? Have you got one?
I suppose a turning point in my career would definitely be doing a set on the Russell Howard Good News show.
Wow.
And the reason that was a turning point for me was because I was at the time I was trying to get a wine show. I'd written a show about wine. I was pitching it for TV, and I needed sort of a TV credit to sort of pitch that properly. And I thought that was going to be the thing that would help me. I loved doing the whole thing, but actually, in fact, what happened was I actually did a clean set. I didn't swear, didn't do any rude material. So I didn't do that purposely. It was just my set was clean. And so what actually happened, I was able to use that clip as a calling card for corporate gigs. And it has paid off handsomely over the years. So it really, really helped. Russell's one of my best mates. I was always going to get on eventually, but you still got to get through the sort of BBC. You've got to ratify you, etc. And they came to see me in Edinburgh that year. I did a show at the Stand, and I packed the room that particular Tuesday afternoon because I knew Russell Howard's people were coming along. Unfortunately, the show went well, and I was on. But it was I'd written quite a lot of new material that year, and I wrote a piece about the Kindle, which was very cutting edge at the time. And I think looking back on it, it was the fact that I had a slice of material that was bang on that moment that probably got me on the show. Right. But one funny thing about the show was you're meant to do 25 minutes, and they'll cut it down to 15. Anyway, I saw a light flash, and I thought that was my time. So I got off the stage on about 18 minutes. And the producer said, no, we keep filming. You need to carry on. So I said, well, can you get Russell to reintroduce me? So Russell said, welcome back, James Dowdeswell. I said, there we are, ladies and gentlemen. The very first encore on the Russell Howard Good News stand-up spot. And it was great fun. And I did another 7 minutes, and we went from there. But it was just about embracing the moment, As I said, that clip helped me enormously. And also, these days, if you want a gig somewhere, they often say send a clip. So you've got a clip of Russell introducing you, and the show went really well, and that's helped me enormously.
That's brilliant. So what's fascinating about you is that I saw your show about beer very recently, which was wonderful. And as a result of it, you've written this book called The Pub Manifesto, and you very kindly signed it for me with my favorite beer, which is Theakston's. Can you tell me more about how the idea for this book came about? Because it is it's not only honest and intelligent, it's also very, very funny as well.
Oh, thanks, Rich. In fact, my first pint, age 18, my first legal pint was Theakston's in my dad's pub.
Best people.
Great minds, great taste buds. In 2015, I took a show to Edinburgh called James Dowdeswell's Perfect Pub. It was on the Three Sisters part of the Laughing Horse Free Fringe. And I outlined the plight of the pub, how pubs were shutting, and said, how can we save the pub? And what's everybody's favourite parts of the pub? And I asked everybody what their favourite was. And then we created a perfect pub around that, a bit like George Orwell's Moon Underwater, but a live show. Yeah. And a friend of mine, Philippa, came along to see that show and said, wow, this would make a great book. And I'd actually collated all people's answers on the blackboard and taken pictures. So unbeknownst to me, I'd actually done my own research. So I started writing the book. And then I actually sent it off to a publisher, didn't hear back for ages. Then I did a gig and I met some from Canberra and said, and they said they had a publishing arm. So I phoned up Canberra Books, the publishing arm, and I spoke to the boss, which never happens, by the way. I just happened to speak to the boss, told him what I was up to. He said, send it to me this Friday afternoon. And then on the Tuesday, emailed back and said, oh, I like that. Do you fancy meeting up for a meeting? By the way, I do all my meetings in the pub. Brilliant. So I got the train to St Albans and we went and had a couple of pints. And he said, it's not ready in its current state, but send me a couple more chapters. And then he gave me advice. We met in the pub over a period of time. And then I got the book published. And like many things, he was called Simon, a fantastic guy. And he moved on. Yeah. And I just snuck in before he left. So that was perfect timing. And it was great fun to do the book. And as a result of the book, I got to tour around a lot of the Camera beer festivals. And that sort of ignited or reignited my taste in beer. And that's been something that I've really got into.
Yeah, that's such a good success story. That originally the blog was a book. I have a script for the book, but originally it was going to be a book, but I couldn't afford the publishing rights. So a friend of mine said to me, "This is crying out to be a blog, which is the more successful. Right, it's an infinite thing. You can just carry on and do it forevermore, which is wonderful." So, but I'm so pleased because this particular book is by my side a lot of the time. Because
meant to be read in the pub.
To it. It's so good. It's so good. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
My favourite comedian, and I told him recently, Adam Bloom.
Oh, good man. That's a great choice. Yeah,
I'm lucky enough to work quite a bit with Adam. I do quite a bit sort of warm up for him, corporate gigs, and he's just got an incredible comic brain, and it's timeless as well. He is he's a proper comedian. He's a fantastic comedian. He's not only funny, he's original and passionate, and he's excellent. I remember seeing him for the first time in Bath. I used to go to see comedy in Bath when I started, and they used to go so often they got me to do the door so I could get in free. And I saw Adam Bloom, I saw Marcus Brigstocke, I saw Johnny Vegas doing his Potter Wheel tour. I saw some incredible performances.
Wow. Did you have comedy growing up in the house?
Like I said, I watched Kenny Everett. My dad was a big fan of Morecambe Wise, so I was introduced to them at an early age. Wow. I used to like Bobby Davro. Yeah. When we watched the Royal Variety, I used to like all those. There was a guy who's called the Slither Man, He used to do jokes, and then
I remember him.
I said slides, I said slink, I slither. He was probably one of the first alternative comics.
Yeah.
He's doing that in the 70s.
Yeah. The reason why the blog exists is Morecambe and Wise. They
Really?
for me are top of the tree. They were the only ones I'd never seen live, one of the very few, and I would have loved to have seen them live. They did a live video which featured a joke about Carlisle in it, and I was like, oh, this is incredible. But I can remember aged about 5 or 6, where everybody, young or old, was laughing at them, and one needed the other. I've read everything about them, and I'm hoping to try and get Gary Morecambe on here to talk about his dad and legacy. That would be amazing. But they were just extraordinary. To ability just to do the glasses, Tommy Cooper's hat, or there's something more than the hat, the fez. There's something more than just telling jokes. They were just funny people, and that's what's fascinating for that sort of thing. But certainly in the 70s, Carlisle didn't have much comedy, but I would go to Newcastle and see some there, or Manchester. But certainly when I came down to London, the first time I went to the Comedy Store, I saw the bill was John Maloney, Linda Smith, God bless her, Richard Morton, and top of the bill was someone called Charles Fleischer, who was a very visual American comedian. And he was never heard of again because he went to voice Roger Rabbit.
yes, that's
But he was extraordinary. But I've seen so many, and of course,
you mentioned John Maloney there. I mean,
he would be another good one.
Amazing crafted one-liners and stories. He's one of my favourites to watch.
His infamous story about his cat is legendary.
Yeah, Edward, brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Just
he's one of my favorites.
You did mention this briefly, but like me, either as a comedian or before you were a comedian, do you go to a lot of comedy shows as a member of the audience?
I used to, but I've got older. I've got other things I have to do. So, but having said that, comparing, I get to see loads of. When you're doing a set, you're thinking 95% about your set and 5% about everybody else. When you're comparing, you're thinking about 50-50. Before bringing somebody on, if they're a surreal one-liner person, I'll maybe chuck in a few surreal one-liners myself to try and ease them into that. Or you watch everything more intently. So, for example, tonight, the headline act tonight at a theatre I'm doing in Sevenoaks is Rhys James.
Oh, he's brilliant.
And I think he's fantastic, and I can't wait to see him. So I'll I'll introduce him, and I'll sit back and I'll enjoy him,
Yeah, he's brilliant.
So comparing, I do feel kind of like a semi-audience member.
Yeah. But it's so good that you can perform this, and I can watch this wonderful art, because comedy is an art. There is no doubt about it. I've so much enjoyed talking to you. You've been a fantastic guest.
Me too.
It's been so good. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Where can people find you on social media? You got any projects going on? Anything like that?
Well, social media, my favourite part of anti-social media, my favourite corner of it is Instagram. I like Instagram.
Yeah.
Because if you like something, you like it. If you don't, then you just swipe past, don't you?
Yeah.
And on Instagram, I'm Dowdeswell Drinks Well. And I started that Instagram to sort of publicise my book. And but I've got more into beers. And during lockdown, I did a couple of interactive beer events, and then people at breweries started to send me beer, and then I do pictures on it or do funny videos. And I realised, hang on, I'm doing all this. It's fine to get free beer, but I'm doing all the marketing work for these people. And then I also did a Zoom tasting with Budvar, and the brand manager called Radim, a Czech guy, gave this fantastic speech. And I thought, that's just like doing stand-up. So I thought, hang on, I can do the beer presentation, I could do the marketing, I just need to find out how to do the beer. So now, I'm not going to be an expert brewer myself, but I know people who are. So I collaborated with, first of all, a lovely guy called Neil Waits in Friendship Adventure in Brixton. We did a hazy IPA in the summer. And then more recently with Brolly Brewing, a guy called Brooke down in Surrey, I sat down with him and we created the recipe. He went and brewed it. And as a result, here I have Lazy IPA.
Wow.
So this is my latest project. So it's an English style IPA.
You've got your own IPA.
My eyes are got to get the camera. So English IPA, all English hops. It's 4.7%. The hops are from Kent, so it's Goldings, Endeavour and Huckins. And I use the same wheat, or we use the same wheat, malt rather, as Timothy Taylor's Landlord.
Wow. That sounds amazing.
And I'm selling that on via Instagram. So selling that via Instagram. And we did 450 cans. And I've almost sold out my first batch.
Good luck. Oh, that's amazing.
I believe this goes out in September.
So your beer empire is coming.
Exactly. The beer empire is coming. So I believe this goes out in September. Hopefully we'll be on batch 3 by then.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Well, I mean, what can I say? Not only a wonderful comedian, but an excellent beer creator as well. That's fantastic. That's so good.
My ambition is to do a tour where you go in to the village hall or whatever, and you come and see me, and it's my beer on the bar. You buy my beer, watch my show. That's the ambition. A bit like RuPaul's Drag Race. I'll get everything.
That's so good. That's so good. Well, I'm going to be first in the queue for that tour to see you.
Bless you.
I'll
been sort you out with one of these.
Well, that's very kind of you. I would, yeah, please. I would love one. I'm going to come. I'm going to come and see you very, very soon. And thank you so much for being my guest. It's been an absolute joy talking to you.
Absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks so much, Richard. Take care.
Take care and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.